Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, well, I know it's cold outside and I got a purchase agreement that I was trying to write and send out before this starts, but it worked good. So if you guys don't know me, you always see my mom's shining face, but you guys don't know me because I'm like just a secret agent, right? I'm like the FBI that runs our business that nobody sees, and I take credit for everything and I don't do anything, right? So anyways, yeah, I just hide in the back and my mom just calls me and I get to be on TV and stuff, and I tell my mom. That's why we were laughing in that picture, because Pioneer Press came on. I'm like, Mom, I don't do anything, but they think it's me and it's actually you, and she was laughing. So anyways, I always joke around with my mom, but so yeah, so we've been in business for like 10 years. We're probably like the oldest of all of MFA's participants. Like we just never divorced MFA. Like they've been, they have a fence for us, they have water, their rent is really good. It's like, why would we leave, right? So we haven't yet. I think this year we were thinking of divorcing them, but with the shutdown, our like land that we thought of buying, and we're really nervous about the move. So, keep in our prayers if I think the shutdown's supposed to end today, right? Or it already ended. So that actually has affected a lot of farmers, believe it or not. So all of the applications that are pending, there was nobody to review our applications. So anyways, today I'm here to talk about the last 10 years of trials and error of like how we've run our farm business. So we went from, when we were at MFA, we were like Chipotle account where wholesalers came in and they bought a bunch of, bell peppers, but they wanted a certain quality, certain size. And we had to buy liability insurance. We had to figure out what to call ourselves. We had to brand ourselves. We had to figure out what liability insurance is. And so today's workshop, I'm gonna focus more on the legality part of like Mumpa's Garden. And when you think of it, I think when we started, we were a hobby farm. So before we started our farm business, I was single, right? I wasn't married to my husband yet. And so I was sole proprietor with my mom, and we were joint in business. And the family was, and over the years, I got married and the name was still under me. Then you have to rethink about how you're gonna structure your business as partners or how you're gonna do it, but none of that really registered. But I continued to keep Mumpa's Garden as a Schedule F, so every year I would still file. And I filed because we thought one day we'd own land and they're gonna ask us for bookkeeping. So when I came to one of these classes like 10 years ago, that was 2008, they taught me to get QuickBooks. So what QuickBooks is an electronic bookkeeping where you can invoice from it, you can type and stuff. But because we're on the farm all the time, we don't do electronic invoice, we do it on the book. And we keep a carbon copy for ourselves, and we give one to MFA or whichever our vendor is, and then that's how we track where our farm comes from. So that was the first thing we did, professionalizing Mumpa's Garden. But I think the three main questions today that Laura had asked me to cover was setting up your farm business, right? Like, how do you know whether you should be a sole proprietor or when you should be an LLC? So to be honest, when I first started, I just got a different tax ID number for mine. So I have my social security, and then I did sole proprietor. I wasn't LLC'd. I didn't go to the state and let them know, but I just did a Schedule F in my taxes. And I don't know if you guys already took that class with MFA where you have to file under Schedule F in your taxes, so you can expense your item, your receipts, and everything. And just to let you know, the QuickBooks, the software that you buy, syncs with your taxes. So every year when I go to my accountant, I just print up my QuickBooks, and it summarizes how much income I make and everything. So being a sole proprietor, I found a really cool website that I thought would be good for you guys. And I think Trish might have made copies, I don't know, or she can email all this to everybody, right, of this. But I kind of wanted to get you guys to know the difference between, in here, are you guys all familiar with sole proprietorship or LLC? Like, does everybody kind of have the idea, or does people don't know? No, yes, yes? Yes? Okay, so good. So I don't have to really go over it, but when you're in farming, I didn't know this, but when you become LLC, because I'm buying farmland this year, and I went to my accountant and I asked him why, should I continue to be sole proprietor, or do you recommend to be LLC? He's like, well, if you're not successful And if you attach yourself to sole proprietor, and let's say you have assets, you have 401ks, and my husband's a financial advisor, and he has all these assets, they can come after your assets if you are a sole proprietor. So for the interest of my business, he's like, if your business go bankruptcy, then you might want to have a LLC so you protect your liabilities. Does that make sense? And so I was like, oh, I never knew that. I just thought it was because, but once you are LLC, MDA, Minnesota Department of Agriculture, actually has an exemption, meaning that we get certain tax benefits being a farmer, but we're still kind of like a sole proprietor under LLC. So I don't know how to explain that to you, but when I went through the process this year, applying for it, they said, oh, you need to go apply for exemption so that you can be exempt from an actual, like you're not actually somebody who makes tons of profit, so you need to go for exemption. So then I had to apply for exemption. So I went to this website here, and it's called, if I click on my link here, will it go to the website for me? It should, okay. So do I just click on it?
It's hyperlinked.
Oh, it's hyperlinked. Maybe I did hyperlink it. Or can I just copy and paste it and send it? Okay. I'm not used to this thingy. So any questions so far about how we decided to go LLC from sole? So for the last 10 years, I did all my bookkeeping through sole proprietorship. I decided, since we were just hobby and farmers market, to keep it simple that way, and just to kind of keep some bookkeeping going and reporting income. So just to give you guys some example of markets, right? So a lot of people say, over the years, how did you hone on? So in the beginning, my mom and I, we had a CSA aside from Big River Farms. So I had my own, we had like a 30 people CSA, and we decided that was too much work because we had to write newsletters, we had to package our stuff, we had to send it to 3 sites, and some people said we had too much food. So to be honest, in my community, like one CSA box lasts us 1 day. That's how much vegetable we eat. So in these families, one CSA lasts them 1 week, and we couldn't understand what they were doing with it. And then they told us there's too much. So then we thought, okay, we were doing it Asian style CSA, so we had like greens, and they're like, there's too much greens in there. So then we had to learn that not everyone eats what we eat, right? And then we started heirloom tomatoes and XYZ. So I think we were trying to be different, but yet it kind of, we learned our lesson. So what we started doing was focusing on a few like restaurants. So we sell to Cafe Bon Appetit, so like Northwestern College, McAllister College. Some of these college gets points for buying local foods. So how we organized our business was we had wholesalers, and then we had retailers, and then we had restaurants. And what I love about restaurants is that every Monday I would send out a produce availability list to them, and I'll say, this is what I have in stock that's extra from what Big River Farms were buying and everything. And I love the restaurants because they were always like Surdex. They were like a high-end restaurant, and they're willing to buy my produce at my actual price, so they weren't willing to mark it down. And they bought, they made cheese, and I love their cheese, but she no longer works there, Heather Saliba, but she was a chef, and she would buy anything that I had in stock, and she'd make soups and sandwiches out of it. So my favorite was, being a sole proprietor, was that. So this is not touchscreen. So what's a really good site is, if you guys, this farmersmarketlegaltoolkit.com, it's from the Center for Agriculture Food Systems. I was researching it while Laura was telling me, hey, you should do this. And I was like, it's really hard to explain to some people, like all of us who are new to this business, like, how do I figure out whether I'm gonna be? So here, it's a really nice toolkit because it even teaches you, like, okay, what is a sole proprietor, right? So it gives you a definition, and then it goes through the pros and cons of like, okay, like if I'm just a hobby farmer, I'm not really yet ready for an LLC, like what are the pros and cons? And it'll explain in here, oh, the pros of defining is it's easy to form, it has few or no annual maintenance obligation, there's no personal asset protection. Well, those are like the negative, right? Like I said, I was sole proprietor, so I don't have any personal asset protection. So let's say if I have asset and my business goes down and I'm sole proprietor, they come after it. But because we're so small as small farmers and we only make, I don't know, $5,000-$10,000 a year when we started, it really didn't matter. And we were taking a loss in our business every year. This is, sole proprietor means you have exclusive ownership and control, exclusive profit and losses. donations, in here it says donations are not tax deductible, but for my, but if it's structured as a for-profit business structure, like a farmer's market, they said it would. So for me specifically, even though I was structured as sole proprietor, and I don't know the resources here, but I go by my accountant, so I always say refer to your tax accountant. I donated over 10 to 50,000 pounds of food every year to food shelves. So just our small farm out there, if you guys have leftovers and you ever actually tally, so I have over donated, and it carries every year in my accountant, and it actually helps our farm to have those tax deductions, because then I'm not paying a lot on taxes. So as you guys are growing your business, think about if you're a downtown like farmer's market, Neighborhood House comes around and collects all the leftovers, and they'll give you a little sheet to say how many pounds you've donated, they'll weigh it. And I just do like $1 a pound, or if it's like really high-end items, like it's $1.50, I just do it per pound, and then that's how I tally it up. So limitation on use of volunteers. So sometimes they say that because you're sole proprietor, then and you don't have like workers' compensation, right? And you're very small, you're only one person, then all of that stuff isn't built in. So once you think of having workers under you, you know, now you have to pay out income. So like, is the sole proprietorship for you? So I'm not a accountant, or neither am I Flake. So I hope Flake will go over some of that structure today. So yeah, so that's how I made the move. So this year is my first year as a LLC. And when you become an LLC, you just go to the state website, and they have this form that you fill out, and it gives you sections to like go LLC. So if you really don't want to go to pay an attorney, well, I recommend you to go to Flag, like our resources at free farm services that we have. Well, for me, it's because, you know, I read and write. So, and I talk to my own attorneys, and they kind of give me advice on how to go establish my LLC. So since I'm only, I was still a single individual owner of just my LLC, then I was the signer, I was a manager. But if, let's say, my mom and I wanted to go together, then I have to go rewrite my bylaws and the articles of operations and stuff. So if you ever want to become an LLC, there's resources. So yeah, getting started, this is really good because it goes through how to organize your sole proprietorship, leadership, you know, who makes the decision, and then it talks about taxes. To be honest, I've always paid for an accountant to help me with my taxes. So even though you guys are starting, I always say dream big. Like right now you may think, oh, I'm only on MFA for like 4 acres or 1 acre, and I'm barely making ends meet, and this is just my hobby thing. I always say that, you know, this is our, I want to say like 14th year in business, and we're just about to launch, you know, our ultimate dream, you know, farmland that we want. And so everything that I kept thus far, like 10 years of records, I still have all of my records, that if they wanted to pull from 3 years, if I wanted to go to, wanted to write a business plan right now and say, hey, I'm going to do a 100-person CSA, I can go back to my CSA numbers to say, here's the success. So I found out that in this business, they're all based on projections. You know, like in farming business, we're never like, this is for sure what I've made. But because USDA, the Farm Service Agency that I'm going through now, my word of advice, if you ever want to buy land, is you have to be very successful at what you do so you can show that you have some success. But they almost want you to be broke too, right? Because before they give you the loan, they're like, you have to get denied from Compeer before you can get FSA. And I'm like, wait, I thought I was supposed to be successful and you want me to be broke to get services. Like, it's really messed up, but it's okay. So does that make sense? Have any of you guys been through the Compeer financing for land? Are any of you guys wanting to buy land in the future? Or like own your farm? Like everyone here, or is only like, can I see a show of hands? Someday, okay, so you guys do have that vision of like, okay, so I'm like a dreamer, so I want this huge mansion with this conservatory where there's little cows and animals running around and everyone's gonna eat healthy and we're all gonna look green, right? So I always tell everyone that every year you set your goal and keep really good records, because when you get to FSA, they're gonna ask for all of your records now, and if it's all disorganized, you're gonna be lost. So when I went in there, I pulled all of my QuickBooks for her. It took me one night to rewrite my business plan. And your plot of land that you choose, dictates your business plan, right? So even though I say, hey, I'm an MFA, I have fencing, I have water, now this plot of land that I have doesn't have fencing, doesn't have water. Well, those are infrastructures that I'm going to build on my lot. So like what I'm planning to and what I want to do is two different things. So I always tell people that, set realistic expectations and know how to budget. And if you have to get professional help because that will help you. Katie Kabuvacek, she's part of land stewardship and she used to be with MFA. She's the consultant that's helping me too to walk through the process. So no, you're not alone. So again, taxes, background laws. So this website is really helpful. Frequently asked questions. Any questions on that? I know this is kind of dry stuff. I don't know. Let me know if it's boring or if you guys have any questions. And then the next thing that Katie wanted me to talk about, or it's not Katie, Laura did, was insurance liability minimum. So why do you need insurance? So let me give you guys a story of why you need it. So my mom and I, we planted in this greenhouse, right? Mom, you could, pass all these out. We're gonna share it because it's like a huge liability package. Mom, like one on each side. There's only 5 of them and she did a great job printing it out. So our greenhouse fried all of our planting seedlings one year and we had no plants. So I found out that when you buy insurance, you have to make sure you buy insurance that covers the crops inside your greenhouse or high tunnel. And I didn't know those questions to ask, so we lost a lot of our plants. And then another year I learned is that I got lazy one year, and you guys know what crop insurance is through USDA, right? When you remember when the hailstorm came and it whipped all of our plants outside, were you guys there for that at MFA where the hail came and like whipped all our stuff 2 years ago or a year ago? So I don't know if you guys were there. So every year, the USDA and NRCS, I believe, they come out to you and they say, hey, make sure you file that how much crop you have in here, because if you ever have a disaster crop loss, you can come and claim, right? So my mom and I did this religiously. We had one row of eggplant. So guess what it is? 0.0001. And I got so tired because I told the lady. They said, well, so what happens is that USDA, they only work with large farm scale, and they don't work with hobby farmers like us. But if you think about it, that's all of our money in that. So we buy like $5,000 worth of seeds every year. I don't know how much on average you guys buy. So $5,000 of seeds, and we put it in ground. The little plants grew up, and the hailstorm came and whipped all of the plants. So for the first 3 months of the season, we didn't have anything to sell because all our plants died. But that year we got lazy and we didn't go and file for crop insurance through MDA. And your liability insurance here does not cover for crops that natural disaster happened. Does that make sense? So I called them and I said, hey, Princeton Insurance, can you please file a claim for all my crops? And they're like, we don't cover your crops in ground. So, but if it's inside a greenhouse, they do. But you have to make sure that when you talk to Princeton or whoever you're buying, you got to ask those questions. But we were first-time farmers, so we didn't know what questions to ask. So that's my word of advice is this year, you're gonna imagine it's like growing your child, right? And your plant's about to fruit, and all of a sudden the crazy tornadoes come and whip up all your little. And then one year, here's another disaster story. You know the NRCS, the high tunnels. So we just put up the high tunnels, but the wind was so strong and it took our high tunnel and figure 8 it in the ear. And now we had no high tunnel, and it was like a $10,000 high tunnel that we just put up. And we were like, what do we do? So when it comes to the reality of this, so we're the farmers who continually get abused by nature, but we're still here, you know what I mean? We're still standing, and we just say, hey, you know what? That turned into a figure 8. We're gonna take the poles and try to rebend them, and if not, we just move on, right? But I think most of us, the lesson learned for those 3 is that I've already went through it, so now you guys are smarter. Oh yeah, don't be like Mopa, right? Where she messed up, right? So the first thing is I say, get in touch with the USDA. Make sure, even though you only have 1 row of bell peppers, and trust me, I've been arguing with them every year. I said, each of these farmers in MFA, we don't own an acre or 5 or 10 acres of one crop. We own, so I literally had to go and say, a square feet equals $1. So they have a system now within their system where I tell them how much my crops are. So we kind of paved the way. So it should be easier. So this year, before, they have a deadline for like fruits and for vegetables. Make sure you guys get in that. That's a free, the government has that free program, right? It's free crop loss insurance. And then here's personal insurance, right? So let's say if someone eats your, my question to all of you guys is when you guys get audited by an organic system every year, do you guys have like a, do you guys know where your food comes from? Let's say if like someone eats your food at Good Acre and they're sick. How can they track it back that it's from your plot? So can we go around the room quickly and let me know, how do you guys track where I can find where your food came from on your box? Can you guys track that? Or is just someone? Do you guys have a tracking system?
Is that like called a lot?
What number?
Lot number.
Lot number? Okay. So do you guys have your lot numbers on your boxes? Do all of you guys write lot numbers on your boxes at MFA? Yeah, okay. So that was one thing I learned too with product liability is I put down lot AB row 5, right on the box. You write down there and you write it on your invoice. So once you get more advanced in organic certification, you start graduating from the program. Now they audit my mom and my farm away from MFA, even though our plot's with you guys. So they're gonna do what they call a audit. They're gonna come to your invoice book and say, okay, so where did this plant come from and if anyone was sick. So under my liability insurance, I have that, you know, and so if you turn to just this page, my liability, I believe is 2 million for what we call general liability endorsement, right? And gross sales is 20,000. So for each of my markets, you should have liability for each market. So do you guys know that? Like if you have Whole Foods that you sell to, or you go to downtown St. Paul Farmers Market or Mill City, you need separate liability insurance. So this liability covers for each of those stores. You guys know that? Do any of you guys have liability insurance here?
No.
Okay,
Can you say it again?
so, what?
Can you repeat it again?
Okay, so for example, this product liability insurance, so I shop for the least expensive company in all of Minnesota, and this Princeton auto insurance place was the least expensive. So I only paid $500 for the full year. And what you need to do is when you buy this liability insurance, you want to let them know all of the stores that you sell at and all the farmers markets you sell at. And nobody told me this, right? So for example, if I sell at downtown White Bear Farmers Market, I need liability insurance there. If I sell at downtown Minneapolis, I need liability insurance there. So, but this policy will cover all those 4 locations, and it's only for $500. So for each occurrence means like, okay, if someone eats it and gets sick and decides they're gonna sue you, you wanna make sure that you have over like $1 million or $2 million worth of insurance to protect yourself in that event. Does that make sense? So if you look through it, you can kind of use mine as an example. And like I was telling Laura, this is like information that's gonna protect you. So don't go with what I have on here, but you can kind of talk to them to kind of tell them the size of your operation. So they always, when she quoted me this, she wanted to go over like, let's say if there was like one case of someone eating something and they had to go to the doctors and they had all this hospital bills. So they have a calculation to give you on how much you need to protect your farm and how big your farm is. So I tell them it's a 5 to 6 acre farm, organic, and we just do solely produce. If you have like food, like your food operation, those are different occurrences and different liabilities. It's kind of like, you know, when you buy car insurance and there's a deductible if you get into a car accident or you get double coverage or single coverage, it's kind of like that but for your farm. So just make sure when you go here, so for example, they have here restaurants with no sale of alcohol. So I do tell them that I sell to restaurants. So they put that in there for like, let's say $5,000 of sales. So I tell them for each market, I keep track of how much sale I do. And then I just tell them, you know, on the total of every year, I only sell $5,000 to restaurants. I only sell $3,000 to the Big River Farm Foods. And I only sell $3,000 to Shared Ground and Good Acre here. I only sell $5,000 to. So you give them just kind of like what you do in sales. They'll tell you what policy you need. So the lady that helped me when I started this back in 2010 was Penny. And if you guys want her information, I'll let you guys know. If you own any greenhouse and you want to get insurance on this, you could also get insurance through this policy too. So all of my, I've had this since day one. So when we took this class from MFA 10 years ago, that's when I started shopping around, and Aaron was the one who found this company for me. So if you call any other company and you give them the limits that I have here, they're going to quote you a lot of money. So because this is a larger company, they can offset the premiums by less. So I think as farmers, we shouldn't pay too much. Does that make sense? Any other questions?
That's 2 million.
Yeah, I have about 2 million on mine, just because we own 2 plots, right? We have at Minnesota Food Station, and then we have some more land that's in asparagus over by Dave Washburn's land. So I keep all of that in crop rotation, even though it's not farmed and it's undercover crop, it's considered farmland. So that's why I include all of the acreage, even though we're only farming in 1 acre. But I want to say this year was our best year in sales and in the efficiency, because we did less land, but we had the same exact sale. So I've been kind of experimenting. So yeah, greenhouse, seedlings, let's see. Farmers market. So she wanted me to cover risk management. Any other questions before I move on? Yes.
Just to clarify about the insurance, so you have one insurance policy,
Yes.
but all those different markets are represented under that same.
Correct.
policy.
Yep.
Okay.
And you want to let them know that, because then if they want to increase premium, they can. You know what I mean?
You list all your market,
Yeah.
farmer market you went, and any sale in a restaurant, and any sale in school, or things like this.
Yep,
So
and-
they know where you at.
And even farmers market. But and also make sure they print the policy. So on this page here, I didn't bring one, but this is the actual policy. But on the certificate, they need to print in that it's a good acre. Because what can happen is that if you don't notify them and they don't have one on file, and let's say all of a sudden shared ground I never got a liability insurance certificate for, they can call you out and say, hey, you know what, you never put in shared ground that they were one of your markets. So just don't assume because you bought the one policy and you haven't disclosed all the certificates, so it could bite you
I
like
just
that.
have questions. When we register for farm market, they are always required for insurance, and the insurance we purchase through Minnesota Farmer Association. Is that the same type of
Probably.
liability insurance or a different one?
Yeah, if it's called liability, like the same thing, then
Oh.
yes, yep. So when you talk to them, they'll know. Like if you talk to any insurance company and let them know it's a farmer's market or whatever, they will be quoting you for that.
Oh.
But sometimes agents get lazy, so they don't ask you all the questions like my agent did. They'll just say, oh, your farmer's market, I'll just get you a generic one. But make sure these line items that I put in here, yours have included it, because it depends on what occurrences is in it. And I always tell them I don't feel comfortable going over the detail, but make sure that you do your due diligence and ask them those questions. Because sometimes agents, they do this job so much that they don't care about you, like they just...
Question.
It is a question?
Lot traceability, how do you manage that as far as, I'm sure you don't have like a computerized system to track lots, but what system do you have in place for tracking? You talk about
Yep,
lots, right?
so on our-
Assigned lot, but then how do you, what kind of system do you have in place to track lots?
So for us is you have to do lot number, row number, and everything. So for example, if like there's rows, because so my parents they plant in rows. So we can go row 1 to 100. So let's say MFA lot A, right? Lot A, row 5, west to south. So, but then on the labels that my parents put on the boxes, on the lower right-hand corner, it'll say lot A, row 5. Lot B, row 6. So on your labels for tracking, and then on your invoice book, they're supposed to put on the upper right-hand corner, lot A, row 5. Does that make sense? So in the invoice, but if each of the line item, let's say I planted eggplants in lot A, but I planted beans in lot C, your labels and all those need to be itemized after your item number, because right now we don't have a systemized tracking. We don't have barcodes, right? Because in the mechanized world, you would have barcodes for each line item, right? But
I was just curious about an audit that comes in and asks you, like, what lot this belongs.
Correct, yep.
How do you trace
That's how you trace it. Yep. So then the carbon copy. So you know, in your invoice book, you know how you put the item like 50 pounds of organic beans. On that, after the beans, you're supposed to write down lot A, row 6. You know, so after each of those line items, because if you don't do that, there's no way of you tracking it.
Yeah.
And so when we give MFA a copy and we keep one copy, at the end of the year, I have to actually manually go into, because we have it Mechanica, it's anyway easier because our orders are coming in from left to right. So how do I know to go home and type it up and then give it to my mom and then she has to write down the lot numbers? So for now, that's what we have to do so that we know where everything's coming from. So if they ever track and say, okay, well, you were delivering this batch on January, can you go back and figure that out? We can just point to the invoice book and say, this is the row, this is the lot. Does that make sense? So I know it's tedious, but then, you know, that's the only way to do it if they're tracking us. And we're not, you know, we're not wealthy enough to have a barcode system where we can just, technically what you do is, I looked into the system where you have a barcode and you can just scan. So let's say for each row, there's like a barcode that you can put out there. You can just scan to say this is where it's coming from. So if they scan the barcode on the invoice, it would be like on your phone. Do they have the scan app?
Yeah, they have an app.
Yep, you can just scan it and just know that this invoice, this is bam. There's a plan of your map that it shows exactly where it comes from. But we don't have enough money to do that yet, so just an idea. Yeah.
The tracking, if something wrong, that means we say log number. Log number mean let's say your plot of land is E1. You put E1, then the other one is the date and the month and the year. In that means lot number. And so when they track back, they be in case we lost the invoice or we lost the thing that you put it down. And in the program, we have one folder just for your farmer too, and we record every single whenever the program requests you to.
So it's a harvest log. That's what my mom's saying. So when you write down on the labels and in your invoice, just date it and make sure that you have a harvest log. So even though, let's say if they lose the label peels off the box, right? We could still know, hey, you know what? Today we harvested this bunch, so you have a harvest log. So I don't know if you guys do. Harvest log gets kind of tricky to take care of because, like, once you're so busy in the summer, you don't have time to like record everything. But to be honest, like being certified organic, they require you to do that. And then they even got to 1.2 where they wanted us to weigh everything, all the beans, because the crop loss couldn't figure out how much production we were creating. So we had to weigh like throughout the whole year, like how many pounds of beans. And then at the end of the year, you just have to tally up how much you made. And to be honest, that had helped us me a lot, knowing that our beans were the worst crop to invest in because we spent so much time picking it and we only had $2 a pound and the store exclusively used us. But then when I did the math, I said after watering it, planting it, and picking, we spent so much time picking that it wasn't even worth our efforts, you know, to go out there, be in the sun. And then, so we got rid of that account. So in a way, some of this tracking system for risk management, it'll help you in the long run. Because sometimes when you're new in business and anybody who wants to buy anything from you, you just keep taking on, right? You're like, oh, I'm going to do farmer's market, I'm going to do this. And then all of a sudden you have so many crops and there's only one of you and you get burnt out. And so every year we get burnt out. So we kind of have a diversity. So that's one of the risk management strategies for us is to segue into this is we hone in on a few crops that we do really well. My dad's favorite is kale and Swiss chard because he loves the fact that he cuts it and then it grows back again. And then he donates tons of it too. So like if none of the markets want them, my sister does carvings, you know, so she uses kale and Swiss chard as like decorations on her table. So they really grow it for her. But so yeah, so we have a diversity of projects stores that we have. We also experimented in high tunnel growing. I want to say this year was our most successful. Last year with high tunnel growing was just the cucumbers. Like having something no one else has in season is crazy, you know, and you make double of what you make growing it? Like, why are you competing with everybody else at the farmer's market? Like, everyone has kale in stock, everyone has tomatoes, everyone has and now nobody wants to eat it because there's so much of it at the farmer's market. So we end up hauling all of our vegetables back home. So the high tunnel growing for us was a hit. Another thing about professionalism is I believe that farmers forget to respect themselves. Like, you guys work really hard, but when it comes to taking care of yourself, because you actually baby this plant from when it's a baby right up until it's ready to be harvested, and that's like 3 to 6 months, you know, of actually doing it. And I also feel like we don't price our, being professional is about pricing your, you know, sticking your guns. Like, yeah, this is $2 a bunch versus, you know, you're certified organic, you work really hard, and finding out those reasonable so that it's not too expensive for them. But for me, I hold my prices the same, and my buyers, if we're not at the market, they would rather not buy from anyone. They would rather come back the next week for us at both our Mill City and downtown St. Paul Farmers Market. This is not to say, hey, look at us, we're showing off, but it's to say that it's your reputation and your credibility, and it's your loyalty to them, knowing that they're getting, and they taste the difference. Sprayed food with, we get a lot of our California, in our Hmong community, we get a lot of our vegetables from down in California. And I was just down there in Fresno, and they have so many birth defects, especially in the Hmong community because of Fresno. So it's because of pesticides, they're finding it on the umbilical cords of babies because of the overcast spray of the chemicals. So then they had a bioengineer go out there with me, and we went to their H&D conference 2 years ago, and the discussion was, what is happening to the food and this community that's like producing all this food. So in the wintertime, when the Hmong community specifically doesn't have our specific greens, we ship it out from down in California. So Fresno is like the main city, the main community that we source our foods. So then now there's a high rise of diabetes, specifically in the Hmong community. So I worked at Hennepin County Medical Center, and they see in just the Asian subgroup of Asian Hmong, people say it's lifestyle, it's whatever, but actually, pesticide is the diabetes, it's pancreas insulation, your insulin, right? Releases the insulin so that your blood pressure and everything's regulated. So actually diabetes is a cause of insulin suppression. And that's because in the food that we eat, so the rice that we get from Thailand also is sprayed. So they did an experiment, and it's actually, my friend who's going through cancer right now, Sandy Hamer, she's my regional vice president, she's in financial advising. She's down in Arizona, and she pays $10,000 a month for treatment for cancer, and she's prescribed an organic food diet and a keto diet because supposedly there's black mold in rice that's been preserved through preservatives and all that. So they shipped her blood to India, and they diagnosed her, it's a $15,000 blood panel, and they find in your body what kind of bacteria and metals have been growing in her body. And so what they do is they have to detox her all the time. And so she came back, and I shipped her out some organic food. And so the seriousness of this, I don't think people understand. So I think being a professional is knowing what it means to be an organic farm and telling those stories. So to me, it's like when I go to these conferences, I go and I just hear stories, and I come back and I share stories with you guys. So like this movement that we're doing, people don't understand why we're so committed or why we want to be farmers. I'm like, if you really think about it, there's a scarcity, like right over here by Hugo where we're buying a plot of land, development's all over it, and no one's saving this land. So if I think about it, they're like, oh, we're gonna do a SHPO and TIPO. So SHPO is to look at land preservative or any tribal ruins on the lot. And they were telling us that we were not going to get the loan if there was any endangered species. And I told them, I said, the developers right next door just developed all of that into housing. And I said, where's the integrity of the lot? And we're farmers, you know. So I was like debating with FSA, USDA, but NRCS. So when you look at professionalizing yourself, you gotta, you guys are already doing it. You go to these workshops, you hear it. And my challenge to you is, are you sharing the story? Are you sharing your story? So for me, my story is my grandma died of cancer when we started in this, and I lived at college, and I tell people I was interested to figure out how she died. And I found out that I actually never wanted to be a farmer. I told my mom it was too hot, it was too sweaty, and we did it all when we were younger. And I was like, I want to be in a nice building and working for a Fortune 500 company where I'm making lots of money and I just live in a big house and I don't have to ever work outside again, right? And I went through college to find out that in a full circle, like I paid $50,000 for this education to find out that it's because we all need to go into sustainability, right? So I traveled to El Salvador and they created, it's called El Chino. It's a Chinese influence engineer who went in who talked about how you can make methane gas from your food scraps. And they created a sustainable agriculture, but El Salvador and Honduras has the highest poverty, and there's only one hospital for the whole entire country. So we were there learning about how sustainable agriculture was going to try to save them. And I was actually just explaining this to the rest of my friends and family that the only reason why there's this border issue with Trump is because of climate change. So what's actually happening, if you guys don't know the story, is because of this climate change, the farmers are no longer having crop and there's no more jobs and none of the stuff are growing in land. So that's why they're migrating out. That's why they need to get to the United States. So National Geographic did a huge documentary on this yesterday that I watched at midnight. And I was like, people don't understand that this is affecting us economically, like this climate change, right? Longer winters, the reason why we don't have snow yet and it's cold. I'm like, the reason why we're all in this room is because we are going to be the savior of the next generation. So then I always tell people, I'm like, the people, the heroes are all in here, trying to learn this on a cold day. And I think that's what you guys have to remember and ground yourself, that there's not that support group when you feel like you're alone out there. And you're wondering why you're going to organic certification. You're wondering why the heck am I having report records? And just remember that respecting yourself, and know your story. So when I turn to you, I want to know, hey, what's your story? Like, why should I buy your stuff? Why should I buy your stuff? Because I've been following Wangku on his Facebook, and I know he learned of this in Laos, and now he's here to change the community. Eventually he wants to become a nonprofit director. So for me, I want to know each of your story, and when I go out in the community, I share your story, and they're going to come to your farm. Does that make sense? So I think that's the takeaway from this, is not to be like, let's look at all the legal stuff and let's get afraid of this thing. But I believe that there's a fine line, and that we all need to stay close, because without us, without the farmers here, I truly believe that the economy, right now they're even discouraging careers in farming, right? And then they're encouraging more of the development. And even in the commercial industry, we're seeing a lot of older generation leaving and the younger generation not coming to even farm. So there's an issue within itself. But the reason why I went into real estate is to help you guys find land, because here's what happens. In traditional real estate, if you don't have a pre-approval letter, the realtor will not work for you. Does that make sense? And in USDA farm loan, you are a guaranteed loan. Does that make sense? So you guys are all already guaranteed a loan. Now we just have to take you to go tell them. And so realtors right now are uninformed and unwilling to work with farmers to find land that has a USDA loan. Does that make sense? And that's an issue I still have to bring up with Flag, because I'm seeing that where realtors will discriminate against farmers like us. Because that's why I became a realtor, because all my realtors fired me. Because they're like, you're trying to find land, but you're telling me you're approved, but you're not approved. Like, so they called FSA, and FSA Farm Service Agency said, we don't provide you guys any pre-approval. They have to come with the farmland first. It's almost like a VA loan where they're guaranteed because of their, woman status, minority status, where they come from. Their ancestors didn't leave anything behind, so the government came up with this program where we can subsidize, So that's one other thing too, is I feel like as this industry moves into professionalizing it, is that there's not enough farms out there. So does that make sense? And I don't want to soapbox about like inspiring you guys to be the next heroes, but that's what I always say: respect your labor, respect your price, and stand up for each other. I feel like sometimes I've seen rotten. So this is really, really embarrassing. As you guys know, the emergency food shelf. They sent out a memo last year to all of us saying that they were getting rotten vegetables. And you know how pissed off I was? Because you know that those vegetable goes to people who are living in poverty or may have cancer right now and can't have a job. So they're counting on those vegetables and they're buying them for $1 a pound. And so last year they chose not to use our farm because they wanted to give everyone equal access, but some farmers were delivering rotten vegetables to the food shelf and they were paying $1 per pound. So what I always tell, I'm not saying it's you guys or anyone, but part of being professionalizing and part of integrity and part of your character is how you deliver your services. And my mom and I, we never, ever donate our rotten vegetables to food shelves. We pick that day and we deliver the next day to them. Does that make sense? So I wrote a memo to the emergency food shelf and I said, hey, have you guys ever been to the Hunger Bash? Hunger Bash is what happens when we don't have enough money in the food shelves and they have to do a huge fundraiser. They get all these rich people in one room and they go off this auction and they fundraise like 70 to 100,000 in one day to last for the year. So at this Hunger Bash, this lady with cancer, she was a professor. She developed cancer and she lost everything she owned. Her bills were so expensive and she ended up living in a single cell. So the discrimination here was it was only these certain people that needed it. And the stories that they told at the Hunger Bash when I was there, because I was a sponsor, basically because we donated 50,000 pounds of food, so they brought me in as a speaker. And what I heard from there was the people who access these food shelves are people who have nowhere else to go. They can't come in, they can't farm. They're not mentally able to. It's not that they want to be there. It's not that they're taking advantage of the system. So when you donate to this emergency food shelf, and I encourage you to, is please don't provide your rotten vegetables, right? It's not from you guys, but that's one thing is me being in business for 10 years, I set the bar high, very high. And I tell even our neighbors at downtown St. Paul Farmers Market, they put the rotten vegetables in the bottom of the thing and then they put top. I said, your customers are never gonna come again. And they come and they complain and they say, oh, because you're Asian, then you must be the one who gives me rotten. So they start categorizing you, right? So I only bring this up because of professionalizing. Like, how do you stand out? And for me to get that feedback from our emergency food shelf, I was really disappointed. I said, hey, that is, and for me, people tell me to keep that hush hush, but I'm just not that way. I'm like, I tell my husband, I'm free-willed, I'm an advocate. And you got to stick to your guns, stick to your character, stick to your integrity. And I think in any business that you do, how you carry yourself and your character, your integrity, and you got to follow through with what you promise. The shared ground this year when I talked to Aaron Blythe, he said the one thing is that promises. Farmers tell me that they can deliver or they overpromise. And they never actually do diligence to their professional plan. So what that does is it makes their farm look like the truth is they never went through and did a good business plan or they sat with someone and talked over. So it makes their farm look like it's not professional, right? So there's no guarantee. So I always tell people, I say, you want to be the farm that all of the good acre could count on, that shared ground could count on. So if they ever run out in their CSA, they don't have enough, guess who they call? They call Home Goods Garden. So every year, Reese would say, hey, you know what? We ran out of this many vegetables. Can your farm be the one that provides? Always quality, always looking good. If anything that has any bug bites or anything on it, we'll send them an email in advance and we'll say, hey, somehow the flea beetles got to our arugulas. We're not selling you our arugulas. Do we deliver half-eaten arugulas to them? No, we don't. So Seward, Co-op, all of our stores know that the quality that we deliver. So I believe that how you deliver yourself and how you communicate and how you follow through. So just don't make too many promises and then not be able to follow through, because then they start making non-biased judgment calls on the rest of us. And I think, but I always tell people that, hey, farming is a very hard career because you never know what you're gonna get for the season, so also be forgiving. But I think a lot of these, we try to be fair. We try to be very fair. And I believe that a lot of these organizations does. But anyways, I think I went past my time, right? Am I up at the 30 minutes here?
Yeah.
Okay. So any other questions, last minute hot questions? I know I was long and I hope it covered, did it cover what you guys wanted as far as liability? Okay. And then flag is next, right? So you guys gotta take your 30 minutes break and yeah, and I brought cards too, so if you guys have any questions after this or you wanna send me an email, feel free to, I think I brought my real estate one, but you could still email me at that one too. So just feel free to touch base with me if you guys have any questions about QuickBooks or which insurance company that I went through. I'll definitely keep that in mind. So, all right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
You guys can take a break for like 5 minutes. Mom, do you have anything to add on tomorrow? Yeah, đừng hay cậu hay rất giàu đi rồi sẽ tìm một hai tiền đi nữa. Just have to take out my business card. Đừng hay cậu thằng 이소 먹겠죠. Nếu như để 이소 먹어야 돼, 근데 빼줘야 돼.
No, wait, no, I'm just saying.
Trước của mày anh hết còn phấn đấu rồi thì anh ấy cứ lấy hai cái biển vào phòng anh ấy
Here you go. Here's some cards if anybody
anh ấy
wants.
bảo mấy người lấy tập chỗ này là chỉ còn nó lâu mà nó
I make it out, yeah.
số không lấy cho chính nó
bây giờ email liền trên tàu
Yeah, email liền
rất
thế nào
biết
okay.
thì rất là biết thì ít gì
That was great. That's made my job very easy.
Oh my goodness. Did I go over everything you were going to talk about? They should have told me what you were talking about.
You did a very good job.
It's all over great right now.
Lindsay, back there, and me, and a couple of people. Lee's not there.
Yeah, he's not there, and then I also left, right?
Susan left, right, yes.
They're not very
Scott, his name is Scott. That seems possible.
Were you guys at the Tuesday one?
I did not make it. I had other things to do. We've been doing it every year. We missed
But I
that.
wasn't sure. I was like, maybe I'll not there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Was it good? Did you go?
Yeah, it was really good. I loved the washroom.
Oh, great.
Which I've never sort of felt like washroom. So
Excellent.
I was just like, we're going to try to do it this year. I mean, it looked easy.
Do you have to do it in a base? Like, how do people mainly do it?
có mình nhớ họ sẽ biết được không phải chơi có mình nhớ họ sẽ biết được
Yeah, because it feels sort of intimidating.
Oh, Mr. Farmer Association.
Well, that's what I was saying. Like, well,
I don't know. Actually, like to copy
you know what I
and
mean? So I get kind of
population.
freaked out too. But
Right.
he
Interesting.
hasn't asked for your yeah, but I'll be, I have so much stuff I gotta get to come with me.
Hắn mang lại cover theo basic things like the library minimum market.
I know.
You know
That was
cái
great.
muốn market đấy là actually actually cái member under the population là chỉ cái point for farmer association. Yeah.
chứ là biết bác của mình chỉ mê
Yeah.
lúc họ hiểu là sẽ hiểu được trong nóng
Yeah, phần mà chỉ cover với cái infrastructure. They are chỉ cover với cái part đấy muốn là cái này.
thì cái sẽ biết sự
Oh yeah.
Như cover cái library nên thế cái cho infrastructure lo về how lo thế nhỉ?
không nó to rồi thì cái to
Có thể ước tính người ta làm tàu thì chỉ sẽ được nên đi farmer market sẽ chỉ có đi vào bên đó là
The basic
tôi chỉ
basic
nói
minimum
với
requirement.
chỉ mê biết xong về đào sinh
如果一起 LLC 一起买的好处，yeah。或者如果他拉到，
mấy sự cho cô ta tăng
而且都叫了现在儿子去。
California insurance probably not apply to them.
Còn đây là through USDA, through USDA. And the crop loss na. Jadi lah tu kita sih, oh my gosh, kita balik ke lu kau ni. Lah, kalau lu masih wakil sih, ustaz wakil mana? Sebenarnya dong. Trong những chị cô vậy chứ, xỉa cái lấy luôn. Rồi cái chị ít cá và phải bớt sẽ là yêu có hay để ít quên rồi một cái này, nhiều quên rồi một này ít chút còn lại một câu chứ không phải lúc học được là oh my gosh, so much cái là quên là một cái đong đong ya, mua sang được rồi này đó, chỉ cái này cái chỉ yêu cái sự đó phải cái này không lớn mà. Thế là yêu cái đấy ít rồi là online ít học này không phải nữa nha, online ít học nó sẽ nhiều hỗ đủ hỗ trợ và kiểu track nào nhiều có nhiều track to total invoice của ít số là
Are you guys ready to start again? Yeah? Okay. So our next presenter is going to be Stephen Carpenter, who's an attorney at Farmers Legal Action Group, which is commonly known as FLAG. And it's a nonprofit law center that provides legal services to family farmers in their communities in order to help keep family farmers on the land. And Stephen's going to be talking to us about some of the legal and technical aspects of risk management for farmers, including insurance options, forming legal entities, and contract licenses.
So first of all, wasn't that a great presentation? Very inspiring, I have to say. So now I have to follow. I have to be the lawyer who follows with all the bad news. So I have just a handout here. It's just one page. There's an agenda on the back, and so. And I wanted to introduce you also to Lindsay, who's in our office. And so, as I'm going to encourage you to contact us and ask us questions. And so, the people who answer your question will probably be either me or Lindsay. So we'll if you call and ask us a question, probably I'll say, I don't know, let's ask Lindsay. So I know several of you from various places. So here's our first question is, I'm trying to figure out what people know already, like who's heard me before and who hasn't, and then I want to try to shape what we talk about so it's doesn't cover things everybody's heard before. So who's never heard me talk about the law? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so, well, okay, you have it. Yes, yeah, raise your hand. Okay, so 2 out of, so I'm gonna, some of what I say you might have heard before.
No problem, go for it.
Yeah.
It's good to hear a second time.
Yeah. That's, okay, so that's helpful. And then we've never, I don't know your name. No, okay, all right.
Kristen.
All right, so you have in front of you a little agenda, and so I want to talk about some of those things, but I also really just want to talk about legal things that you guys are interested in and care about. And so we've got plenty of time. Some of the things that I was going to say already got said, which is great, and then some of the things not, so I'll have something else to add. I guess the main thing that I want to say is that, your main problem, your main job is farming. Farming is hard enough. What my job is to help make sure that you don't get tripped up on the law part. And so part of that means where the law is really simple, let's keep it simple. Where the law is really maybe a problem, let's make sure we know where those problems really are. And we can talk about some of them today, but also, nobody can remember all this stuff. I can't remember this stuff. I have a pile of notes here. So what I hope you do is if you have questions about some of the things that we talk about, that you'll be really happy, you'll be willing to call me or send me an email. It's at the very bottom of that front page. And then either Lindsay or I, or there's a chance it might be somebody else, will get back to you. And so that's the way I'm kind of thinking about it. So we are going to talk a little bit more about some of the things that we've already heard that great presentation on. One part does a great job. I've got a couple of more things to say about some of those issues, and then maybe talk about some of these other issues that I have here at the bottom, if any of those are interesting to you or you have questions. And I really want to encourage you to ask, interrupt and ask questions if something's not clear, or if you go, oh, hey, you know what else I wondered about? Let's talk about that too. So feel free to interrupt. We got plenty of time, but also we will never get to everything. So you can follow up with us later. Make sense? Excellent. All right. So one of the first things that I wanted to talk just a little bit about is this whole question of forming an entity, as a lawyer would call it, an LLC or a corporation. And one project did a nice job of talking about some of the ways that she was thinking about that. And I did not know the site that she had information from. That looked very good, actually. On my notes, I also have another one. If you notice at the bottom of the page, in the bottom of the page, where did it go? I gave away all my copies. Get out of here. So at the bottom of the page on number 2, there is a link, and I'll send an email that will have, so you'll have this, so it's easy to link to. There's a long, boring book done by the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development, and it's about forming a corporation, an LLC, a partnership. And I really like this booklet because, first of all, it's about Minnesota. And I understand that you guys are all in Minnesota. Now, if you end up farming in Wisconsin, you'll have some different rules. And one of the things about these laws is that for some stuff it's the same all over the whole country, but some stuff it's not. And so you got to be a little bit careful. If it's going to be a Minnesota law, then let's learn Minnesota law. So this booklet is about Minnesota law. They update it every year. And I think it's really accurate. And so, for example, if you call with a really hard question, I'm going to look at this book too, and then I'll try to figure it out from there. And so it's just a resource, and it's really long and really, really boring. But if you think, well, how does an LLC know? What's a good question? You have to do unemployment insurance if you have an LLC. Then this is the kind of place where it really sort of collects all that information. And so I think it's very, very helpful. You don't have to memorize the answers to questions. You can just always look them up is a good rule. So the thing that I wanted to say first of all about forming an LLC and an entity, a lot of lawyers will tell you it's just the greatest thing ever, and how could you possibly not have some confusing legal entity? And at Flag, actually, we don't really, I mean, everybody should make their own decision, but it's not like you can't farm if you don't have one. You know, most farmers are just what lawyers call a sole proprietorship. That's just you going out there farming, selling stuff, and doing your thing. Now, the more money you make, the more it really begins to make sense to do a complicated entity. Because one of the things is helpful is for taxes. But you gotta make a bunch of money to pay a bunch of taxes. And not everybody, nobody wants to pay taxes. On the other hand, to jump through a bunch of hoops to avoid the tax consequences if you make, $300,000 a year, it's like, well, maybe we'll worry about that when we get there. Let's try to make a bit of a profit now. The other thing too, and the people that do big confusing corporations with farming, part of what they're trying to do is get more money from USDA and farm programs. And so again, that's the really big operations. And so it can make sense for them. It can also make sense if you're really concerned about handing your farm off to the next generation. Which of your kids will get it? What will the estate be like? If you do that, that's another really good reason to do an entity. And some people just want to. Some people want to sort of organize the farm, under one legal umbrella. It's completely fine. It's completely great. But my thought really is that, just to be honest, sometimes people put the cart in front of the horse a little bit and get too excited about their LLC before they've even started farming. And there's no harm in it. I mean, if you're not doing anything wrong, it's just my point would only be, well, you probably didn't need to do that. And if you really wanted to do something, spend your time doing something else, I'd say go ahead and spend it doing something else. So I don't want to discourage anybody, but I don't want to make you feel like you're not a real farmer if you're not a corporation or an LLC. So the thing that worries me most about LLCs and LLPs and all these other things, and is that people, you guys have heard me talk before, you've heard me say this, because I say this to farmers a lot, is if you're worried about getting sued, a lawsuit, like we just heard a great explanation about why you should have insurance when you sell food, but also if you own a farm and somebody gets hurt on your farm and they can sue you. A lot of people think the way to deal with that risk is to form a corporation or an LLC, and from a lawyer's point of view, that's not really the best strategy. I'm not saying it won't help you, because basically what you're saying is that I'm a person, here's my hippie farm, LLC. If you get hurt on my farm, I'm just going to say, oh no, that's the hippie farm LLC. That's not me. Don't look at me. It's not mine. But the problem is, if somebody really does get hurt, a smart lawyer has a pretty good chance of piercing the corporation and getting all the way to you. So what I really strongly suggest is just what we heard earlier: buy insurance. Do your LLC, do your corporation, but get the proper insurance. And so as long as as far in my book, you want to have 5 corporations, do it. You just like the idea, great. You're making a lot of money, go get a complicated LLC or something. But don't do it because you think that's the way to stop from getting sued. It may help, but it's dangerous. It might not work, and the real answer is insurance. If you want to do both, great. So that's, I don't want to, I'll say one last time, if you want to do an LLC, go for it. but just don't hope that it will stop you from getting sued and hurt your farm. Any other thoughts? Any questions about that? Corporations or LLCs?
So buy insurance before you do anything.
Buy insurance before you do anything that somebody could get hurt.
Okay.
In other words, if you're not active yet, it's not necessary, but
I have a very small farmer's market in the town that I live in. It's only like 8 or 10 vendors, and my husband's uncle made me do an LLC. This is a business guy, he's like, do it. And I have a choice. But we also had insurance.
yes.
So.
Beautiful.
And on the third market day, a lady fell and hit her head. It wasn't my, or nothing came from it, but that was a really big reason as to why you have insurance.
I mean, that's such a good
I mean, it was an
example.
accident.
People have,
Yeah.
let me tell you, people get hurt.
Yeah.
People fall down. Well, is she
Insurance
okay?
is relatively, I mean, the policy that we have is very, very cheap.
Yeah. We'll get to the
Yeah.
sort of kinds of insurance here in a second, but
Yeah.
but actually that's one of the best stories. I mean,
Yeah.
of course I'm a lawyer. Oh, what's a good story? Somebody fell and hit their head. Excellent, you know. But I have to say, nobody ever wants anybody to get hurt.
No.
But things happen, and if you have insurance, then you've done your part.
I was just gonna ask if by default you're a sole proprietor. So if you don't do
Yes,
anything, you're
very
a sole
good.
proprietor.
Well-
or do you have to file something to have something?
You're by default a sole proprietor unless you're a partnership.
Okay.
And what's a funny thing about this law goes back, centuries. Sometimes people are partners and they don't even know it because the law says you're a partner if you act like a partner. So if you and I go out, grow some vegetables, split the expenses, sell them together, and split the profit, we may never say the word partner, but we're partners. And so, but in general, everybody's a sole proprietor. And that's the simplest thing. It doesn't get simpler than that. It's you out there doing your thing. And you can hire people, you can do all kinds of stuff. It doesn't mean you have to be tiny. But basically, yes. And we're going to talk in a second here about registering your name with the state. I know that people ask about that sometimes, so we can talk about that. But I love the discussion that we already heard about entities. You can't believe how complicated some lawyers can make these entities. Oh my goodness. You just think, what is going on? Why are we doing this? We're not, making iPhones. We're trying to farm here. So let's keep it simple. Let's farm. Okay. So that's entities. Registering your business. I often hear questions about people wanting to register their business. And actually, I think there are sort of 4 different types of issues here. And so, we're going to go through each one. One is register your business with the state of Minnesota, if you're in Minnesota. Another is, which is a different issue, is getting a farm number at USDA, which a lot of people should do. I'm not going to say everybody, but pretty close. A third thing is, and you guys kind of know this because MFA connects you to the organic stuff, but a third completely different thing is whether or not you're organic, because that is a certification process. It's completely unconnected to everything else. And the fourth thing that's again completely different is if you need licenses of any kind. If you're going to have a food truck or something, you may need to have a license. It's going to vary all sorts of places. And so these are all 4 ways in which you go to the government and say, here I am, I'm signing up, I want to do my thing. And so let's go through each one. And again, you know, sometimes people hear, oh my gosh, I've got to register my business with the state, or I'm not a real farmer. It's like, well, you know, maybe you should, maybe you shouldn't. It doesn't mean you're not a real farmer. So here's the deal with registering your business. This is the rule in Minnesota. If you are transacting business in the state of Minnesota, so let's just say me, if I am selling vegetables, that's a business transaction. If I'm doing that, and if I'm using a different name than my own true full name, then I need to register the name of the business with the state of Minnesota. So I could be the biggest farm in the state of Minnesota, but if I just call the farm Stephen Carpenter, me, I don't have to register. Maybe I want to. But if I say I have a business, and it's a small business, but the business is Hippie Farm Lawyer Incorporated, I've got to register the business with the state. And so if you're just farming and you're selling grain, or, you know, selling something to a school district or whatever, you may not care what sort of name your business has. And if you don't, and you want to go by your own name, register if you want, don't if you don't want to. If, however, you gotta have a cool name for your operation and for marketing reasons, or whatever you want to, you know, whatever turns you on about having a name for your farm, then you should register. You by law, I mean, it's not like they are going to come carry you away if you don't, but you should register with the state of Minnesota. And it's really easy to do. You just go to a website, and that's that rule. And I actually meet people that don't, you know, that get worried about it. I mean, it's just not something to fret about.
So what website? Go to register the business.
Yeah, it's the Secretary of State's office. If you send me an email, I will send you a link.
Okay.
And will, at that point, will it error out if that name's already in use or something?
The Secretary of State will not double check for you. And so you can have more than one business registered with the same name. I mean, there are ways to sort of check. You probably don't want that, you know, but
if the name exists, I don't think you can create another name. Like if
it
the
may
exact name exists, then you, because they do ask you to check for name, right? When you change your name.
My understanding is for the simple registration of the name, it's possible to duplicate. Now, if you start getting tax identification and stuff like that, then it gets more complicated. It's, you know, it's easier to bump up against stuff. And if you start doing copyrights, or, you know, like, you quickly get to a place where the clarity is important. But
I said that. So I mean, I was registering for nonprofit organization, so they'll tell you at least up front. I thought they said, what name are you going to call, and they'll check to see if that name exists, and it comes back and says, is that? So they rejected my name. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
but I was doing nonprofit organization, so maybe that's the thing.
I mean, you know, now I feel like I need to go look it up, which, because I actually think I go look it up. Somebody, if you send me an email, I'll look it up. That always the best answer is I don't know, but I'll look it up. But I'm pretty sure that I shouldn't even say. I'll go check. My recollection was that you can have duplicates, but we'll figure it out.
If I remember remember correctly when I was setting up the farmer's market, I think you could do a general search to see if somebody else had
Yes,
it. If there's
definitely,
a separate, it wasn't that they were looking for you, but they had a database. I think that you could go look to see if, Craig's Groceries take it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. What about Costco? And then you have to renew your registration every year, or it will lapse. Okay, so that's creating a business. There's nothing, that's just a business. That's nothing about farming in particular. That's, you want to, start a gas station. The same rules would apply. Okay, so a totally different thing that is completely about farming is that local USDA offices, you can go in if you have a farm, and people will call it getting a farm number. And it is actually a number. I mean, you get assigned a number. And this goes way back for decades. Once you started getting these farm programs, USDA started assigning certain farms a farm number. Now, of course, farms change, they get divided, they expand, whatever, and so it's sort of this ongoing thing. And there's nothing super special about having a number, except for this, that if you ever want to participate in any USDA programs, and we'll talk just for a second about what those might be in a second, you will need to deal with them. You'll need to go into that office, and if you don't have sort of your assigned number for your farm, they're going to want to do it then. And I actually think, again, it's a sort of thing where people can get a little bent out of shape about whether they have a farm number or not before they really, maybe need to. But I actually really think it's good if you're getting started farming, you have, especially if you own your own place, but even if you have say a multi-year lease, I think it's really good to go into these local offices, say, here I am, I'm on this plot, this is what I'm going to try to do, I'd like to sign up, I'd like to hear about the farm programs, put me on the mailing list, the email, whatever, right? Get yourself into that world. Now, there's some people out there that do not want to be a part of the federal government, they don't want to deal with these local offices. More power to you. But if you ever want to take part in one of these programs, you're going to have to do this anyway. And if you think you might be interested in what they do, it's good to be on their radar, as one might say. So you go. It's super simple. They have these incredible maps. I mean, they can find your farm. It's sort of like before there were Google Maps, there were USDA farm maps. They really do like a zoom there. Oh, there we go. And so once you sign up, you're in their system, and people doing this sort of stuff that we do here, you can get the feeling that's not what USDA is all about. USDA is all about these huge corn farms, big hog operations, but it turns out that there is assistance, there is money, there are programs for people doing direct marketing, organic, smaller scale, even renting. And there can be a headache, there paperwork, but I think it's worth checking it out. If there's a drought and you've signed up for NAP, and if you're organic, there's a non-insured assistance program. It's called NAP. A lot of monk farmers, our office has tried to help people use them. It can be a headache. But if you sign up and you have a drought or a really bad year, actually, people do get money. It's for real. But if you want to participate in any programs like that, you have to have your farm number. Also, this whole question of getting a loan, USDA will will help you get a loan or actually make a loan to you if you want to get bigger, you want to do an operating loan, to buy inputs in the beginning of the year, or even buy farmland. And so as Mopah was saying, she was pointing out that it's kind of strange that you have to get turned down by somebody else before they'll make you a loan. And that is true, actually. They do have some kind of weird rules where basically their point of view is we only make loans to people who can't get loans anywhere else. So that's why they make you get turned down. I mean, it sort of seems odd, but and I'm the last person to defend USDA actually, but our office sues them. They don't think we're very nice to them sometimes. But they do programs that are good, and I like to see those programs get to people, like the folks here. And you guys have been left out from these programs, and so I think it's really great to the extent you can know about them and use them. And that means just picking a day, going in there, and introducing yourself and telling them what you're doing. Especially now that the government's open again. Because those people were all like out fishing or ice fishing. I don't know what they were doing. I'm sure they weren't very happy about it. And then, I don't know if you knew this, but people were grumbling so much about USDA offices being closed down. Right before they came up with this deal, they announced that they were going to make all of them come back, but not pay them. Yeah, let's go into the USDA office and talk to the friendly USDA officials who are there and not getting paid. It's like, yikes, no thank you. So, but by the way, could I borrow a bunch of money from you? And can you help me with this complicated paperwork? And they're just going, but it's over for. Oh, yeah, right. It is one of my important jobs of these things is not to get political, because you just never know. All right, so that's signing up for your farm number with USDA. They will send out information. Oh, I know another thing that people do in the metropolitan areas is you can use what's called EQIP money. It's a conservation program, and there have been people who've been able to use EQIP money to build hoop houses, and they don't pay for the whole thing, but they pay for most of it. That's the kind of thing that if that's what you wanted to do, it can make sense.
What is that EQIP? Where is that from?
That's U.S. Department of Agriculture. That's USDA.
And it's a grant or a loan?
It's what they call it as a cost share, which really means it's a grant. But what they say is that, just to make up, super simple numbers, let's say you want to put in a fence, or you want to build a pond if you have livestock, or you want to do a fair number of people, as I say, have done hoop houses. Let's say the hoop house is going to cost $100. If you build it the way they kind of want them built, instead of follow their rules, they may pay $70, but you have to come up with a $30, and you have to do it. If you don't, they're going to want the money.
On their website, do they have these grants or?
Yes, they do, and so the program.
It's not geared more towards, say.
This program is called EQIP, which is, who knows where they come up with these names, but it's Environmental Quality Incentives Program, EQIP. And so there's actually a lot of money in EQIP. Some of these programs are sort of obscure, they don't do a lot. There is real money in EQIP, and if you're an urban farmer, there is less, but the hoop houses are good. I'm sure other sort of storage facilities and that type of stuff might be helpful too. But if you're doing you know, any kind of animal agriculture, eggs, poultry, there's a lot of things that they can help you with fencing and things like that. And it's just this sort of, it's like, maybe it doesn't interest you now, but it may be in the future, you know, and again, I'm not trying to push anybody into them, and you know, do it or don't do it, but there's real money in that program. So the third thing, and you guys kind of know this, but I'm just going to say it anyway, a third way that people register or sign up their farm is to be organic. And that's a totally different set of rules. As you know, the farm where you guys have your place is the whole thing certified? Is that all?
What's that? Big River Farms.
Is it all Big River? Yeah, I think it is, right? And so does everybody here? You're all at Big River, right?
We have land at my house.
Oh, okay.
And as of right now, I'm not.
So, okay, but everybody else is actually doing something on a certified organic farm, which is really quite a thing. And so, it's a weird system. You don't get certified by USDA. You get certified by people that USDA says can certify farmers. So it's kind of a weird system, and you have this set of things that you have to do. But what I would say is, if you're trying to be organic or you're trying to maintain your organic certification, it's sort of yet another type of certification, or where your farm gets listed and looked at. The last thing I just would say is, it's almost unfair, the level of complication. But if you have to do licenses and if you have to, you're selling in a market that requires a license, that's a whole nother way which you often have to sign up, pay money, and it's not connected to any of these other three things that we just talked about. It's yet another sort of whole thing. So, any questions about signing up your farm? Yes, sir.
So is the registration business come with the tax ID?
Oh, well, no, tax ID is different.
Oh, it's different.
And there's a set of rules. So if you work, you have a social security number.
Mm-hmm.
That is already, actually that is a tax ID number. But then if you create one of these entities, you may or may not have to create a separate tax identification number for that business.
If you're hiring someone so you would probably need that more, right?
If you're hiring, you're going to have, right, that gets you into a different world. Or if you pay enough to have to do a so-called 1099, then that gets you into the tax identification number system. Fortunately, it's really easy to do, but that's another. So your farm could have its own tax identification number if it is one of these entities.
Okay. One more question.
Yeah.
If I register for just business name, does the NEC require insurance?
Do they require what?
Insurance policy or?
No. So it's not like driving a car where you have to have it.
Okay.
No, you do not have to have it. No, it's not required. Nobody can. It's your decision.
Okay, got it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Good. Very good question. Insurance is so weird. We'll talk about it a little bit
Because
more.
sometimes we go online and say, do you have policy, something like that, and I just want to make sure about, if simple registration register for a business name and doesn't require that.
Does not require.
Okay.
Now, I'm guessing that at almost all farmers markets now, they require you to have insurance for your food sales. Now, I'm not going to say all of them, but if I had anything, if I was running a farmer's market, I hate to say I would make people do it too.
Yeah, I feel that right now the state of Minnesota,
I kind of feel like really quiet.
Yeah. Well, and I know that the Minnesota Farmers Market Association has a deal with an insurance company where you can buy insurance for farmers markets, and I mean, it looks like you get a little bit of a discounted deal. And because if you have to be a member of the Minnesota Farmers Market Association, and then you can buy the insurance. And if that's how you sell, I mean, I haven't compared all the numbers, but if that's how you sell, it looks like that's a very good deal. The only thing that I would worry about is if you also sell at places that are not a farmer's market, like you do a CSA or something like that, then your Minnesota Farmers Market Association will not cover that other stuff. You see what I'm saying? So, but I think the way it works actually is if you sell at 3 farmers markets, you know,
It's one policy.
yeah,
You can get it as a vendor and you can get it as a market itself.
yes.
Yeah, if you go sell at a grocery store, it's not a policy that will cover that. I think our policy was for the whole market was $250 and that covered an entire calendar year.
Yeah, it's
And the vendors can
not
cheaper that.
it's not that expensive. I mean, I know it sounds high, but for this peace of mind, I have to say, and I think actually, if you don't sell processed good or something, it's maybe even less. You know, I think the cheapest vendor rate might be like $200. I mean, it's easy to look up.
Yeah, I think it's cheaper than that.
Yeah. So.
I got from last year $60 in membership fee, and the insurance only $100.
Yeah, that sounds exactly right. Sounds right. So, any other questions? Yes.
So tell me if this year if I do CSA or to share ground or for CSA, you have to buy another separate cover for.
Well, unless they have it as a part of what of working through them. You want insurance for that somehow. You see what I'm saying? It's like, I don't know what their agreement you have with them is. They may already do it. Ask them. Has anybody else done through them? If you have a hard time getting an answer to the question, I can try to help you. So we're supposed to be over by 8. I bet nobody would be upset if we left a tiny bit early. I'm trying to be your favorite teacher, you know. So let's just break early. So, but let's talk about a couple more things. I want to talk a little bit about, really mainly for a few minutes, about insurance. And we heard a great discussion of the importance of insurance earlier from Paul, but I want to say a little bit more about the fact that there are really 3 types of insurance. And I hope people can sort of, it seems crazy, but there are 3 types of insurance and they all do different things. And so you need to kind of decide for yourself what's right for you and what you need to do. And so really, 2 of them are about ways that people can sue you. And so the first one of those is what lawyers call premises liability. Premises being a place, like the good acre is a premises. So if you own farmland, or you have, I think even, well, I mean, I hope people, even if they have leased land, you know, would get premises liability. It's not very expensive, but here's what premises liability does. Let's suppose you own a piece of farmland, and somebody comes on your farm to buy your vegetables, and they get fall down and get hit in the head like happens at your farmer's market all the time.
3 times.
What?
In 1 year.
Oh, goodness.
We've been good for 2 years now.
Yeah, next year all the tints are just going to be coming down top. If somebody comes on your farm and gets hurt, they can sue you. And so what premises liability insurance does is cover that. And so, I mean, again, I'm going to sound like the lawyer who's always thinking of the worst thing possible, which I kind of am. Let's say you have a farm and you have a well there that you didn't know about it. Somebody falls in the well, or somebody steps on a rake, or you've got a piece of farm machinery and some kid climbs onto it and, you know, gets it out of gear and off it goes. I mean, we know farms can be dangerous places. It is really easy to get hurt. And the law, I didn't make up this rule, the law says even if someone trespasses on your farm, does not have permission, is there up to no good, and they get hurt on your farm, they can sue you. Like I said, I did not make up the rule. But premises liability insurance covers you for all of it. All right, that, and so the thing I kind of want you to remember is, if you have insurance like for farmer's market, but you own your own farm, your farmer's market insurance may not cover if somebody walks onto your farm and gets hurt. And so that's why I kind of want to think about it as 3 different kinds of insurance. One is I want you to think about insurance if somebody comes on your farm and gets hurt. And boy, you know, if you have one of these so-called U-picket operations, oh my goodness, please, please, please get insurance. Because you got kids running around, it's like, what, you know, who knows what could happen.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Okay. Does it ever matter if it's, like, what if it's purely accidental? It does not matter what the injury was or the way that it happened. They still can sue and you still need to have insurance.
Right, because basically if it's total, when you say totally an accident, you mean that you didn't do anything wrong.
Meaning she tripped over her own feet and fell in.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. So
Yeah.
in other words, not, oh, you know, the roof fell in on top of her or
I
something.
started to handle the rake out to trip her because she made me mad.
But here's the problem. Well, actually, that's not covered by insurance. Don't do that.
Okay.
Don't build a pit and have somebody fall into it either. You know. So the problem is, as unfair as it seems, if somebody does trip over their own feet, that's kind of when you most need insurance.
Okay.
Because if they do sue you, you're left defending yourself on your own. And the insurance company will hire a lawyer, they'll argue back. If they want to settle it for a little bit of money, maybe they will, but it's kind of all up to them. Because otherwise, you know, some jackleg lawyer says, well, no, it was a slippery, you know, banana peel from your tropical forest garden, I don't know what, right? Yeah, so now, I mean, in terms of whether someone can win, you know, I mean, the more dangerous situation, the more negligent you are, if you want to put it that way. Of course, it all matters, but it doesn't stop people from suing, you know, and people are people.
Since I own my land, do I have to have separate insurance or does the homeowner's insurance?
You need to check.
Okay.
And chances are very good that if you have more than just a little homestead, the homeowner's insurance does not cover it. They used to call these comprehensive farm liability policies, and they were kind of standard. So that's one kind of insurance. Now the thing to remember is your premises liability insurance probably doesn't cover you for sale at a farmer's market, right? And so the thing, so that's like probably a different insurance, or if it is the same, you want to make sure it's the same. Maybe your insurance company would do both together, great. But you really want to say to them, I want both. And it might be 2 policies, it might be 1 policy. It's never worth it to try to be tricky with your insurance company. Because, I mean, here's another way to put it. The only time anyone will find out if you hid things a little bit from them or weren't quite straight with them, the only time it'll ever matter is when you need the insurance. And then they're going to say, well, yeah, but you didn't really tell us about this. And it's like, oh, no. You know, so it's worth it to give them the reality. Now, on the flip side of that, in the state of Minnesota, if your insurance company knowingly denies your claim, knowingly will not cover you, when they know they should, the courts will bring the hammer down on them. So you kind of need to be honest with the company, and they have to operate, the legal term is in good faith. If they're not in good faith, boom, boom. You know, imagine a jury of us where an insurance company is refusing to be fair with somebody, you know, who paid for insurance. We'd go like, yeah, right, okay. How about $1 billion? You know, okay, you know. At any rate, that's on tape. Oh no. Okay, the third type of insurance is crop insurance. That's what you have to buy to protect your crop from drought, from hail, so slightly different, is a little bit of a different insurance, but the sorts of things that are natural disasters, flooding, and you do not buy crop insurance from USDA, you buy it from private companies that sell it. But the interesting thing about crop insurance is that USDA pays for 2/3 of the policy. So if you can buy crop insurance, it's usually a good deal because the government is paying for most of it. And let me tell you, those big farmers with wheat or soybeans, they know very well what a good deal crop insurance is. And people in our world often do not. Now, you can, if it doesn't, just look at what I would suggest is just look at the numbers. You may have a small enough operation it's not worth it, but maybe you do. And there's something called a whole farm revenue policy that's really kind of meant for really small, diversified operations. And Lindsay and I have both worked really hard to try to understand these crazy whole farm revenue rules, and so we could help you with that if you're interested. Have we not, Lindsay?
We've tried.
Their handbook that they use for the program is what? How many pages was it? Like 400 pages. And we were going through it going, oh my gosh, this is giving us a headache. But I think we figured it out. I do. So, and it's for farms like yours. It's for small, like diversified for you. For crop insurance means you have this vegetable, you have that vegetable, you have this, a little bit of that. And see, often you would have to buy crop insurance for each crop, which is sort of crazy. This means you don't have to do that. And so crop insurance, again, you got to make your own decisions. But if you get very big at all, it's really definitely worth looking at.
When you say big and small,
yeah, that's a good point.
Based on revenues or?
Yeah, based on, so I'm going to say that, I'm just saying this arbitrarily, if you grew $20,000 of produce in a year First of all, if you're mainly growing a single crop, like say you're an expert
And
strawberries, if they'll sell you a strawberry crop insurance policy, I'd do it. And the reason they would do it would be if they have enough information to know how strawberries do in your area. Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, I think it's it's the most underused thing for small, diversified farms, smaller farms, direct marketing farms, is crop insurance. Because really, you're only paying a third of the cost.
So that's why having records is really important, because then you can go back and show value.
That you must have records. And it's another reason to go into USDA, because once you start filing these reports with them, it'll be, oh, I had 10 acres of sweet corn and it did this. And that's how you establish your yields so that you can qualify for things like crop insurance. Now, actually, you can sign up for it even without that, but it's so much better if you do that. And if you're organic, you've got the records. As much of a headache as organic record keeping is, it means you've got the records. You already do it, so let's use them in ways that help you. Yeah.
What if on your farm you have, along with veggies, just a whole bunch of flowers? If you have a big part of your business is cut flowers. Is that considered a crop, or is that considered farming? Or is it considered agriculture?
Well, it's definitely in agriculture, and I don't know if it qualifies as a specialty crop or not. If you send me an email, do you remember?
I'm trying. I think I might be confusing these. I feel like it is, but I don't.
Yeah.
I think having us check would probably be.
Okay. Just
Yeah, and we can look it up, and then especially if you have if you're raising flowers that are often grown, in the area, that makes it more likely they'll have doing something. And if you can't do crop insurance, you can probably do this NAP that I was mentioning, which is not as good, or the whole farm revenue. So I think
That's where.
send us an email. We never say the wrong thing. You can just say, "I'll look it up." All right. So we're bearing down on time. That's the three types of insurance.
Where the premises and then the farmer's market, or?
Yeah, or sort of food safety. I mean, you can call it. The funny thing is when you look at these policies that insure you for sold food, you won't see food anywhere in it. It's like it's called an occurrence. It's like it's this strange legal language, but it covers you for food sales. It's like a little, game of dot to dot to dot to dot, but it's eventually you get there. All right, if you get big enough that you're starting to hire other workers, you get into another set of questions, which I don't think really makes sense to go into very much, but let's just mention them. One of them is minimum wage. And there are two types of minimum wage. One is the federal government's minimum wage. That's $7.25 an hour, but there are exceptions for that if you don't have a very big operation, and that is to say, it's bizarre. It's like basically I'm just going to go low on this because I don't remember the exact number. They have this bizarre term, man days a year. And if you have like 500 man days in each quarter, this is sort of a strange thing. If you don't have that much, you're exempt from the requirement to pay federal minimum wage. The reality is you need to have like 4 or 5 employees going full time on a farm to have to pay federal minimum wage. But it's just, once you start hiring people, you need to know there's such a thing as a minimum wage. So there's a federal one, there's also a state one, which is actually at this point more, It's $9.86. If you're a smaller farm, it's only $8.04. Again, I tell you, I wouldn't sweat it until you get a little bit bigger and you started hiring them. The question that is a good one is what happens if you're hiring people from your own family. And so for the federal minimum wage, if it's your spouse, your kids, or your parents, you don't have to pay them minimum wage. It's like, yeah, have your mom work for you. Pay her $1 an hour. Perfect, right? So for the state minimum wage, there's a slightly different set of rules. I mean, I'll just say this. Once you start paying, if you start paying people in real numbers, it's just something you should think about, know about, look up. Overtime is also an issue. If you start asking people to work 1.5 times their weekly, 1.5 times 48 hours, and they don't make $580 a week, you have to pay overtime. So that didn't sound right, did it? If the people are working 48 hours a week, you have to start paying them 1.5 times their normal salary, unless they're making, we'll just say $600 a week. So if people aren't making very much, they work over 48 hours a week, you have to start thinking about overtime pay. And there's such a thing as occupational safety rules, where you have regulations, all these, the famous rules of a ladder's got to have so many steps and blah, blah, that it applies to very large farms, not to you guys, but it's good to know it's out there. So those were the topics that I told Laura I would try to cover. Any questions? It's all the happy news. All the good things that can happen when you talk to a lawyer. What did I leave out, Lindsay? Okay. Perfect, in other words, right? So, well, I feel like it's kind of a wrap. Oh, it's 1:45. Yeah. So the thing that I really want to emphasize most is feel free to call the number, you'll get our office. It's probably in talking to Lindsay or me. I have my email there. If you have questions about this stuff or other kind of related stuff, please feel free to contact us. And good luck. Yes?
Maybe you didn't tell us what your role is and what you...
Oh! Well, I'm a lawyer. I'm a lawyer.
I feel you were a lawyer, but I think you said it, but I didn't know how you tied to this organization and farmers.
Yeah, well, so our law office is a non-profit law firm. So what we try to do is get grants to pay for our office, and then we work for people for free. So we don't charge MFA for this. We MFA and we try to raise money to do this type of thing. And so we'll try to raise money to answer questions that you might have. So that's actually a good thing to say. We won't charge. If you ask me a question, I won't charge you. I hope that helps. Does that answer your question? Yeah, I know. Yeah, go. What's this $600 bill? That was 5 minutes. What? It's $8 an hour for a small operation. If you're you know, if you feel like if you're worried that you might be have to pay a minimum wage, call me and we can talk about it. We'll figure out the rules. Of course, thank you. You guys are the heroes. You guys have been out there this time of year, do anything possibly throwing this I know.
I have 31. But I do I do the width. I do the width section, and I got 32 rows. But if you do as the link, probably that is about 12. If you do 145. Yeah. If you do as I think about 15.
No, I'm happy to try that.
Yeah, 15, but I do the link is, if you, for example, my partner is like this, right? And I do this way, I got the
I know.
But if you do this way, it's about 15 or 16.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Good
do
luck. It sounds like a great project.
This is
like
way, right?
32.
Yeah, that's 32.
That's how I'm gonna.
Yeah, last year I did this.
I was thinking 35, but I could.
Yeah, this is.
I think it's about 32 to 35, but I have walking way is walkway is about 18 inches walkway, so that's I measure and I got 13. But I do only 30 inch there, so and this.
Okay, yeah, so then this link here is 32.
Yeah, 30 and the walkway
32
is about 15 to 18 for the walkway, and you got 32 exactly.
32 rows, and they're gonna be 30 feet long.
The long, I think that is, I forgot the length. Actually, I forgot about that, but on your map, you will see about.
But I just want that's what
Yeah.
I didn't notice that.
Do you have your map? Yeah, you do have your map. I think here, I got. Oh, here. Yeah, here. Yeah.
Yes.
You will see. If 169, then you are divided by 2, and you will get the link which is this.
Oh,
And you
that's
just,
what that is.
yeah, for example, what box? Oh, here. Yeah, and you just use 268 divided by 3 and you get your image. much they are the same, but if you describe a green and gold, you know exactly of this.
Can you know the
Right.
this north or south,
I think north is here.
But I actually had a horse, and I didn't have insurance, and he was behaving in this was.
Yeah.
He was hit by the hail and he broke his leg.
because that helps me,
And I know
the sun's moving
Yeah.
this way.
That was such a terrible storm, so much loss.
The garlic here, I want to be on
Yeah.
the hands, you know.
Yeah, I have two bags of that.
But it turned out bad.
And last year I did this box, and this year I will do the whole things.
It's great to see you.
But I will,
Are you having
my wife, and summertime I do have three teenagers.